Hello, Girl Scouts family and friends. My name is Miss Melissa from Community Engagement, and I'm going to show you how to turn your super self into a real-life action figure that you can play with. You're going to need a couple of supplies. The first thing you're going to need is some clay or salt dough, and you can make that using salt and water and flour, or you can use clay that is air dry or bakes in the oven. You're gonna want a ball of clay that's about the size of your fist, a little smaller than a tennis ball, and something to poke a hole in your clay that isn't sharp, like a toothpick. I didn't have a toothpick, so I used a straightened out paper clip. And you're going to want some string, yarn, and a pair of scissors. I'm also going to make some clothes for my action figure when I'm done. So I have some paper towels, some markers, and some tape as well. So we came up with our super selves, and that was really exciting, right? But the next thing to make our super selves even cooler is an action figure of your super self. As you know, every superhero needs an action figure. So the first thing you're going to do is take your ball of clay that's about the size of your fist, and again, this can be any kind of clay or salt dough, whatever you have at home. You're going to take that ball and squeeze it until you make it into two balls that are about the same size, two halves that are about the same size. One of them we're going to put down for right now, and the other one we are going to break into three balls that are about the same size. 1, 2, 3. It's okay if they're not exactly the same size. You can always pinch off some and get them more equal. So right now I have one big ball and three smaller ones. I'm not using my three smaller ones right now, so I'm going to put them off here to the side. And I'm going to take my big ball and I'm going to roll it a little bit on the table until I have something that looks a little bit like a hot dog. This is going to be your action figure's body. So once we have our body ready, we need to make our head. That's what I'm going to use one of my small balls for. I'm going to hold my hand flat and just roll it around on the top of my ball until my ball is nice and round, and I have a head to go with my body. The next thing I'm going to do is take another one of my small balls and make it into a snake. To make it into a snake, you hold your hand flat, push down a little bit, and roll backwards and forwards. It'll take a little time, but that's okay. And you want a snake that's about as thick as a skinny marker and about as long as twice your body. So there, twice my body. Then I'm going to pinch my snake in half, and now I've got a body, head, and two arms. The next thing I'm going to do, I bet you can guess, is make our legs. I'm going to make our legs the exact same way I made our arms and roll them into a snake. It takes a minute, but that's okay. It's okay if your snake is a little lumpy too. The trick to making a snake that's nice and round is to keep your fingers really straight when you're rolling it. So now I'm going to pinch my snake in half again, and I have two arms, a body, head, and legs. So you now have a choice. You can take your action figure and put it into a permanent pose. Up, up, and away! Yay! Or you can make an action figure that you can put in lots of different poses once it's all done baking or drying in the air. I'm going to make an action figure that I can move once it's done drying. So I'm going to take my 2 snakes for my arms, my 2 snakes for my legs, and my big body. And I'm gonna put my head to the side right now because I don't need it. So I'm gonna take my paper clip and I'm gonna make a hole in the side of my body. It should go all the way through like this. And you wanna wiggle your paper clip around a little bit, or your toothpick, so that you get a nice big hole. See how there is the paper clip going from one side of my body to the other? And when I pull it out, because I've got my hole nice and big, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. I have a hole in the side of my body. Well, not my body, but my action figures. The next thing I'm gonna do is make a hole in the top of my legs. So the same way I made a hole in the top of my body, I'm gonna make a hole in each of my legs. So I stick it through the paper clip or the toothpick, wiggle it around a little bit, and then you have a hole that goes through the top of your leg. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my other leg. I'm gonna poke it through, wiggle it around a little bit to make a nice big hole. And then I have a hole like this that goes through my arms, or through the legs of my action figure and through the body of my action figure. I'm gonna wiggle this around a little more to make my hole nice and big. When I am ready, I'm gonna do the same thing to the top of my action figure and my arms. So just like I made a hole there on the bottom, I'm gonna make a hole at the top of my action figure too. And I'm gonna wiggle that toothpick or paper clip around till I have a nice big wide hole for my arms. You should be able to see through your hole to the other side, and you should have 2 holes on the side of your body. So when you look at it from the front, it looks normal, but when you look at it from the side, you see 2 holes. Then I'm gonna do the same things to the top of my arms that I did to my legs, which is make a hole in them. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. And that is the last thing I do before I let this dry or bake it, besides attaching my head. So I'm attaching my head, and I have my 2 holes that go through them, and my holes that go through my arms, and my holes that go through my legs. So now it's time to wait a little bit. We're either gonna bake our clay or salt dough in the oven, or let it dry in the air. So we're gonna pretend this is all dry. And the next thing I'm gonna do is take a piece of my string, and I am going to put my action figure together. So I'm gonna take my yarn. I used yarn instead of string, but you can also use thread, string, yarn, whatever you have at home works just fine. If you're gonna use thread, I would double it up a couple of times to make sure it's nice and strong and doesn't break. So now I have my arm strung on this piece of yarn. The next thing I'm gonna do is put this piece of yarn that my arm is now strung on through the body of my action figure. Let's see if I can get this through. Sometimes it takes a little patience when you're doing arts and crafts. That's okay, because you get a really cool action figure at the end of it. So I was having a little bit of trouble getting my yarn through, so I decided to use a needle. This needle is not very sharp, but you should always check with someone at home if you're going to use something sharp like a needle. So now my string goes through my arm, through my body, and I'm going to put my other arm on here. And now I have arms that can move. I'm going to tie a knot in my string to make sure that my arm doesn't come off. And do the same thing on the other side. Then I'm going to cut my string. And now I have two arms that can, oops. Like I said, sometimes arts and crafts takes practice and patience, and sometimes you have to do it more than once to get it right. That's okay though. Now I've successfully repaired my arms, and because I used the string, you see how they swing? Now I'm going to do the same thing and attach my legs the same way I did my arms. I'm going to thread my yarn through my leg, then thread the yarn through the body, and then thread the yarn through the other leg. So now, just like my arms, my legs can swing free. I can put my superhero in whatever pose I want to. So if I want him to fly up in the air, he can do that. If I want him to sit down on the ground, he can do that. His arms and legs swing free. And that is how you make a superhero action figure. I am going to do one more step because I want my superhero action figure to have clothes. There are lots of ways you can make clothes for a superhero action figure, but the way I'm going to do it is using some paper towel. I like to use paper towel because they're easy to color on and they wrap nicely around the body of my superhero, but they can also be taped together and you don't need special supplies for them. I colored my paper towel to make the clothes for my superhero, and now I'm going to wrap it around her. I'm going to make a little hole for the arm, and I can cut or I can tear the paper. That's one of the fun things about making clothes out of paper towel. It's really, really easy. And my superhero is going to be wearing green because she is a superhero version of me. You can take more time with your superhero and make them more detailed or more realistic, but this is my superhero action figure. Up, up!